So George, a film I caught over the weekend in cinema was Nickel Boys, directed by Ramal Ross, which is an adaptation of Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name. I hadn't actually seen much marketing to this, and then you mentioned it, and I think I'd seen someone else. I'd seen a thing on social media of someone else talking about it, showing clips from it, and I'd heard great things. Sirens on our end. The Sirens are back.
Sure
I don't think they'll be picked up on the mic,
but they do exist, guys.
It's nice to say, just for us. Nickel Boys. So this is a film set in 1960s in segregated Florida, and this is about a young black kid called Elwood who is growing up in America in the 1960s in segregated Florida, and as he's growing up, the film is set in a first-person point of view perspective. Okay. And it's very textural and very intimate and immersive. It reminded me a lot of some of the shots from After Sun, where it was like the texture of a towel and like feeling grass and like someone recalling a memory. This is literally from the first-person view. So often the character looks up and sees their reflection in the ceiling, or looks down and you see their stomach and their feet. It's really indulging in that first person perspective. And we start with young memories of playing in the garden. He's being born in this time where he's being told about race relations from his parents, but it's something he's not quite yet experienced. But he's watching the speeches of Martin Luther King on television. So it's like this tide of racial relations is turning, but he doesn't quite yet have a context for it. He ends up in a very bad situation where he hitchhikes in a stolen car from a black man who picks him up, and they get pulled over and the car is stolen, and he then actually gets taken to a reformatory school named Nickel Academy. We are then cutting forward in time in the noughties, where this same character, who's no longer in a first-person perspective, we shoot from behind his head, who is looking at news articles that are coming out about Nickel Academy. And he is reading the truths of what occurred at that academy, and we are cutting back to his memories of how he experienced that. I didn't know this story, so I was basically experiencing it for the first time. And as I said, this film is shot in first person, and it's him and a friend of his named Turner. And the film is shot in first person in a way that I've not really seen before outside of like Peep Show, which obviously is very different in tone. But you know, if you and I were to film a conversation, you would do first person coverage of that. What that does, which is really interesting, is that it totally puts you in the perspective of someone seeing the world from a black boy's perspective in a way that you might not get the set, especially because you really feel like it's someone recalling memories because they've seen something that is now making them think through that. And as I said, it's like experiencing the civil rights movement. He's remembering speeches and his experience, but also it intercuts with lots of footage of the Apollo 8 images of the first images they got of the moon in orbit. And I sort of interpreted that as like, he's remembering something from his past, but the news and history will remember this time period for something else. And the two are basically being spliced between each other. It has a very non-linear structure where we're constantly cutting forward in time and then back towards his experience. Most of the actors in there I didn't recognize, apart from Fred Heckinger, who plays a character who works at Nickel Academy, who we've seen in Gladiator 2 most recently. It looks absolutely beautiful, and the first-person cinematography is accompanied with this full-frame photography sensor, and it's got a 1.33 to 1 aspect ratio, which if you don't know, it's kind of like almost square, but a little bit wider. And what that does is that it really indulges in this like spherical prime aesthetic where when you're filming these conversations which are first person, it's like any moment I could freeze frame that and it would be a gorgeous portrait of a person in a moment in time. It's gorgeous to look at. And there are loads of just very textural moments when he's lying in the grass and watching some older kids kiss under a jungle gym, and he's seeing light dappled through leaves, and you can tell it's like memory, smells, textures, people's clothing, fabric, waking up in a hospital bed and the lights. And that effect was wonderfully immersive, and it never felt gimmicky, even though it really does sort of like hold you through this point of view camera. I've looked at some stills of the cinematography, and the actors themselves are wearing this camera on a chess piece to film the person in front of them. So the actors are doing a bit of, they're sort of holding the cameras as well, which is really interesting. It's all shot on a Sony Venice. And so it has this very painterly, photographic, almost like magazine editorial style to it. It was very haunting, but very intimate, but also very hopeful. It's someone recalling a memory that's very dark and very sad, but also in a light that's not bound by the sadness of the past. I thought it was very, very interesting. It is very long, but also I left that experience and it was like I had jumped into someone's mind. I was really sort of privy to their memories and their experience. And the point of view is so clear for me as a white man in 2024, 2025, being transported back to a moment in time I otherwise couldn't have experienced. And the film is really brave in pushing that perspective, and I think it's very, very good. I love that I didn't know almost all of the actors because that made it all the more real for me. And so it's almost always point of view, and we start with Elwood, but then we're also transitioning to Turner's point of view, and sometimes we play scenes twice, but from the other perspective. So it's really delicately acted. It's very played down. It never sensationalizes what occurred, and we only really see. Yes, we can see the articles being scanned through on a computer, but we only ever are seen his perspective of those same things. So we don't see everything that happened, but we just see his experience. It's beautiful. Anyone who adores cinematography should check it out for something that looks and feels really different. Very good. Really, really enjoyed it, and people should check it out. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets some good awards attention.
It's funny because you mentioned like it's so immersive, but sometimes when films try such a concept approach, it can bring you out of it. Like I found that with 1917, I was so aware with like the we're going to try and do an extended cut that like, but sometimes if it works, you can.
Weirdly, it like filled my field of vision, and I saw it in a nice small Curzon screen, which just I think I was in this black box for just over 2 hours, and I came out. It was like I really felt like I'd had a whole load of memories washed over me. And that the film is non-linear and slightly. It jumps around quite a lot in the same way that your brain would if you were trying to remember something from 30 years ago. You'd be like, or 40 years ago even, you would go, yes, I remember that and this moment and this texture. There's this moment his mum is slicing a cake in the kitchen and she's also talking about race relations and how black people shouldn't overtake what they deserve, and she's like reserved and it's basically just sort of rambling about race relations, and she's also slicing this cake and her fingers are like running over the knife and just sort of like, you can tell that he's listening to her, but he's focusing on something else, and it relates to her like taking a slice of what's hers. And so all of that is just very textural and well done, and it's interesting. It's like I had my own dream the next day when I saw it. It was like I was trying to recall moments of a dream, because that's the way it presents itself to you. But really interesting. Would love to hear if other people have seen it. You should definitely check it out when you get a moment. Nickel Boys is out now.
That's Nickel Boys. Let us know your thoughts if you've seen that to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. But yes, I also saw it make a lot of people's top 10 lists from last year, because I think it came out in like November in the States, but it's that thing of like we get the hangover and stuff. So it's like, okay, well that's now a 2025 film for us.
Yeah.